Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another of the brand new beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series, as we have the Sinoceratops here to take a look at. The newest wave, the final wave of the beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series has just begun shipping. I have obviously received mine, the final few figures. There are, I think, 4 that I have left here from the entire Ceratopsian series that are left to review. Of course, this is one, which we have already stated, and you can quite clearly see is the Sinoceratops. So kind of sad that it's over, it's finally all here, but excited for the Tyrannosaur series, and knowing there are a few smaller Ceratopsians we'll be getting eventually is still really cool. Obviously still has me quite hyped for what is left for the Ceratopsian series, but the official line ends here. But as you can see, again, we have some really nice artwork here on the front. You can see the Ceratopsian there inside of the window area of the box, but you just can't see it too well because of the glare. And then if we turn the box around and we take a look at the back of the box, you can see quite a few of the other Ceratopsians. Of course, all of Wave 3 are present here on the back of the box. And we also have a sneak peek of the card that is inside the collectible card, as well as the title of the species, some information on the species, and letting us know that the artwork was done by Raul Ramos, who we have featured on the channel before as far as his original sculpt with his Enhangira, and also, of course, he's been working with the beasts of the Mesozoic for quite some time. One unbelievable artist for sure is Raul Ramos, but I'm super psyched to take a look at this. It's been a little bit since we've had a new Ceratopsian in a few weeks here, so I'm very much so anticipating checking this one out, so let's pop it out of the box right now. So we have our Ceratopsian, our Sinoceratops out of the packaging. Of course, inside the packaging you will find the tail assembly instructions, which are very important to listen to. You definitely want to, warm the tail up and stuff. You don't want to force it because you could very easily break your Ceratopsian if you do that. And also, you're probably going to hurt your fingers because I have stupidly applied a few of the tails without warming them up, and it was quite the task to get them on there. I risked breaking my figure doing that, and also, again, just annihilate my fingers every time because it's so hard to force it on there. And this is one that for sure you definitely want to warm the joints up on. And then you also have the super nice looking art card here with the Sinoceratops, just showing the Sinoceratops in its natural habitat, and also showing you just how realistic and beautiful the paint scheme that we have here for our figure truly is. It's one of the things I like about the cards, is because on top of getting beautiful cards, it gives you an opportunity to see a very realistic and lifelike depiction of the figure, showing you, again, that the paint schemes that they give the figures, although very flashy and, quite striking, look super nice and really natural on the figures. And then here on the back of the card, we again have the Beasts of the Mesozoic logo, the Sinoceratops, some information on the Sinoceratops, as well as a little dinosaur toy photography right there. And then here is another of the many massive Ceratopsians in this line, and you can see the Sinoceratops is really quite the looker and an extremely large figure. The entire Wave 3 was filled with nothing but large figures. It does not cease here with the final 4 that I have to review. As you can see, the Sinoceratops is extremely sizable, and the paintwork honestly looks really nice on it. You can see here with all of the coloration, there's just so many different colors jumbled together, but somehow it does look, again, really quite nice and natural, and I really love the coloration of the face. I think the coloration of the face is extremely appealing to the eye, so striking, and again, so flashy, but in a very nice, realistic way. So, let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this fantastic Sinoceratops right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Sinoceratops, that is one beautiful looking head sculpt. Like, it is so nice to see and so refreshing to see a Sinoceratops that is a much more scientifically accurate version as opposed to a Sinoceratops based on the Jurassic World version, because it seems as though anytime we've been getting a Sinoceratops over the last few years, they're always the Jurassic World style version, because Fallen Kingdom really, brought Sinoceratops into light a little bit more, and obviously we've been flooded with figures from Nanmu and of course Mattel and stuff of the Sinoceratops since. And although I do really quite like the Jurassic World version, it's still nice to have one that is not a Jurassic World version once in a while. And you can see as far as the sculpting and detailing, the very fine detail, we have some fantastic scale detail throughout the entire course of the face. You can see it up here on the upper jaw, you can see it on the lower jaw, and of course the paintwork of the beasts of the Mesozoic always is so good at bringing out every ounce of detail in the most realistic way possible. You can see some very nice washes and dry brushing have been utilized throughout the entire face, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that throughout the course of the entire figure. You can see some very nice detailing there around the eye, a lot of wrinkling and everything. Beautifully painted eye with a yellow and a black pupil, and I like how they have that striping leading off of the eye and kind of striping down and even leading up into the frill. It looks really cool. I also love how they have the striping coming down from the horn right there down into the face. Just such a striking appearance for the figure, with so many different, like, very dark black stripes, and the lighter coloration behind the black really makes the black jump out and stand out. You can see the coloration up here in the face. We have like some really nice dark green washes, as well as like some orange dry brushing. We also have some whites here. We have like some brownish oranges. We have more greens. We have, again, some lighter brownish tones down here, almost like yellowish browns in certain areas. So as usual, we have a ton of color variation for our Ceratopsian. The beak is beautifully sculpted as well, and you can see that here with the really nice paintwork they've given it, as it's been painted with a black but really nicely and lightly dry brushed over, so all of the cracks and crevices and detail there in the beak pops so nicely. Just genuinely looks like a real living breathing Ceratopsian's beak. Like, this is the coloration I would honestly expect to see, and kind of like the weathering I would expect to see on it. The jaw, of course, is articulated, as are many other areas of the figure, but you can see the inside of the mouth sports some very nice tones of color, very nice realistic tones of color in there, as well as a beautiful gloss coat. Can't get in there too far, and the light really doesn't want to show it off, but wow, look at that. There you go. You can really see how impressive the detail is on the inside of the mouths of these figures, and you can also see that there is even color variation inside the mouth. There are teeth back there, which you can kind of see right there, as well as the tongue sticking up in the back of the mouth right there. I don't know if we can get back there to press it down a little bit and kind of get it out of the way, kind of see a little bit better. I wish the light would shine in there better, but it is a very dark mouth that we have there. There you can see the teeth on both sides. So nicely done. Like, the coloration and the sculpt inside the mouths of these Ceratopsians is honestly mind-blowing, and the jaw does articulate really quite nicely. As you lead up here, of course, into that trademark Sinoceratops horn, the horn is also very nicely painted. Of course, it's sculpted nicely as well, but the paint really brings that detailing out quite beautifully. We start out with a black coloration kind of leading off of the black stripes here in the face, before transitioning to a lighter coloration as we lead out the length of the horn there, and it's very nicely dry brushed over so that you can still see some elements of the darker black in there. But again, you can also see some lighter tones of color, almost like some very light khakis in there, along with kind of like this greenish tint that the horn kind of has. So a lot of color variation right there, and it just, again, looks so lifelike and realistic, so beautifully done. You can see up here on the top of the head, you start to have kind of like a little row of osteoderms running along off of the area above the eyebrow area here for our Sinoceratops, painted with a nice variation of brown. Actually, like two different variations of brown, it seems. And as we lead up into the frill of our Sinoceratops, you can continue to see so much color variation, as we have some pretty bright yellows up here. We also have some whites and some orangish browns, sort of yellowish browns as well. And then there's some nice black speckles and stuff right there in the lighter areas of the frill, and we also have black that kind of runs around the border of the frill. You see some larger scales here and there as well, kind of almost like osteoderm-like scales poking up in certain areas. The spikes that run along the frill itself also are painted very nicely, similar to the horn here on the snout of our Sinoceratops, but definitely a slightly different shade of color. But they're again painted in a very realistic way, where they kind of appear to be weathered and just really look alive. And of course, the entire paint job that we have up here in the frill allows it again to have that really nice, very flashy look. But pretty much the entire figure really does have that flashy look, but you always expect to see some flashiness in a frill of a Ceratopsian, and they have achieved that really beautifully here on the Sinoceratops. If we lead back here to the back of the frill, you can see that we have a green back here, also a dark green that kind of runs around the border of the frill. And this is the type of stuff that always blows my mind when it comes to these beasts of the Mesozoic figures, is just how above and beyond they go to really give you so much paint variation on your figures and just give you the absolute most beautiful looking version of every species they release. It's just mind-blowing when you have companies like Mattel out there that they just release like the absolute bare minimum of paintwork, and then you have companies like the Beasts of the Mesozoic that just give you tons and tons and tons of paintwork, although very obviously these are far and away two very different style dinosaur figures when it comes to the Beasts of the Mesozoic and Mattel. A world of difference when it comes to that, but still, again, you can just see so much color on here, and it just blows my mind. Leading down here onto the lower jaw, you can see on the underneath we have a pretty nice view of the throat and stuff. Leading back along the neck, you have more color variation with kind of an off-white and some greens poking up here. You can also see some nice tensing in the neck of the Sinoceratops as you lead along the side of the neck. We pick up some nice browns as well as kind of like a peach type color, another area of the black, and then we have some nice green up here. The green seems to have been given a beautifully dark green wash, and then kind of a lighter green for the upper part of the scales that really helps them to pop. You can also see a variation of brown running along some ridges there, actually more like osteoderms running along the spinal column of the Sinoceratops, and you can continue to see those more like scutes here running along the spinal column of our Sinoceratops, and then you see some very large, very rough looking scales here on the side of the figure. Kind of what I would expect to see on a ceratopsian would be these really big rough scales. And you can see again that we have that nice green, but we also have like some light, almost yellows or light greens poking up here and there, as well as the black kind of running down from the back and just patterning all over the place, almost looking cow-like in certain areas. And then we also have some, again, off-whites here in the stomach region, and then variations of brown picking up the further down into the stomach region we go. The scales stay very big and very rough looking as you lead down the course of the body until you get to the lower part of the stomach. You start to see them decreasing in size a little bit, but honestly, they stay fairly large the entire course of the main part of the body. As you move down here into the leg, you can see some creasing right here behind the leg, but moving down into the leg itself, you can see some muscle definition. A much finer scaling is found on the legs, more so than we see in the stomach region, and that's kind of a given. You would expect that. Quite a few different variations of greens as we move down the leg, including even some variations of browns. Two different variations you can see just right there, like there's a darker brown and then a lighter brown. And then we move down to a really light green that's beautifully dry brushed as well in the foot. Really nice detailing there as far as the skin texture in the foot. Very nicely painted nails as well with kind of a dark gray, given a gloss coat so they shine very realistically. And then moving back up into the body here, you can see the hip bone is present here on the rear part of the Sinoceratops, a few osteoderms and stuff poking up here and there. And again, some more nice coloration as we have varying tones of green as well as black, some off-whites and stuff moving down along the hip region of our Sinoceratops, and you continue to see those kind of scutes running along the spinal column. They actually transition from the brown to just a green here. Actually, not even just a green. They're basically the colors that just run across the top of the tail, leading out the rest of the tail, so that brown coloration for the scutes on the spinal column does taper off right there. And then you can see down here in the side of the leg a few more osteoderms, again some more really nice, very large, thick scale detail. You can also see some more muscle definition displayed here, as well as just a plethora of coloration as always. Some nice wrinkles and stuff here in the joint of the knee. As you move down the course of the leg, you see extremely large calf muscles on our Sinoceratops. Again, it's a very large animal, a very large figure, but an even larger animal, so you of course are going to see some pretty muscular legs to carry that kind of weight around. Quite a few different tones of color yet again leading down into the ankle area. You have some lighter browns transitioning to kind of like a very light off-white with some brown dry brushing over the toes down here for the feet. Nicely painted nails yet again. The paintwork of these ceratopsians is always so careful and precise. Just shows you the level of care that goes into these. And then leading up into the tail, you can see a little bit more kind of like skin wrinkles and skin folds and stuff. We lead out the tail. The scale detail does start to get a little bit smaller, but still remaining that very large, tough and rugged looking scaling that we've seen throughout the course of the figure. And we have again some more really nice coloration as we lead out the length of the tail. We almost have like a striping effect, sort of, with some blacks and browns and even a little few splotches of the off-whites before transitioning to a completely brown tip for the tail with a nice dark wash included in there as well. And then running along the underside, we do have a nice light coloration for the underside, but it kind of has like this brownish tone that runs along the edges of the white. Like we have white on the underside with a nice kind of a light brown wash included as well. But I love how this brown from the side kind of stripes in and stuff on the underside. It looks really cool. The detailing looks phenomenal. We have some nice chest muscles and stuff as we move up the length of the underside of our Sinoceratops. More fantastic looking detailing and paintwork on the underside. And you can now see the opposing side of the head again looks just as fantastic as the initial side did. So much coloration. It is honestly mind-blowing to see how much coloration is present on the Sinoceratops here in the face and running up into the frill. Just absolutely gorgeous, very nice, precise paintwork throughout the course of the figure. You can yet again see more like tensing in the neck and even some skin wrinkles and stuff down here in the throat on this side of the Sinoceratops as you move back through the course of the figure. Being an articulated figure, it's going to look fairly similar on this side compared to what we had just seen on the previous side, so no need to get too thorough as far as looking at this side, but we're obviously going to look it over regardless, and you can see that again, it just looks absolutely gorgeous, and I love how nice and naturally the paint is applied. On a figure that has so much coloration like this, you would think that there's so much room for error as far as making the actual paint application look more like paint on a figure as opposed to body color, but that is not the case. It really does look like body color. They've done a fantastic job of painting the figure overall with so many different tones of color, giving it probably one of the most striking appearances out of all of the ceratopsians in this line, and this Sinoceratops yet again is another incredible release from the Beasts of the Mesozoic line. As far as articulation goes on our Sinoceratops, of course, we have already shown off the fact that we have the articulated jaw. You also have some very nice articulation in the neck in two different areas, and those two areas really combine to give you some beautiful movement in the neck of the Sinoceratops, allowing it to look up, look down like it's going to eat, or take a drink, and of course look left and right. So a lot of really nice mobility in the neck region. As always, when it comes to the ceratopsians, probably one of my favorite areas is just how nice the neck articulation consistently is. We also have articulation here in the shoulder as well as the elbow. Now, I have not moved any of these. Sometimes they're very stiff, so it takes a few times of trying or even warming them up with a hairdryer to really make them articulate nicely. So be forewarned. You can see it's articulating, but it is definitely stiff. Absolutely needs to be kind of warmed up a little bit. So we have articulation here in the elbow. We also have it in the wrist, which can swivel. A lot of these joints can actually swivel if we show you that. So you do have the ability to swivel them, but on top of that, you can also articulate them up and down and all over the place. Very nice articulation there. We also have articulation here in the midsection, which can twist. You can actually completely swivel that area as well. So some pretty cool articulation there, and of course you can go left and right as well. And then you have articulation in the hip, which that's actually really smooth, very, very smooth right there. And then you have articulation in the knee. It is super stiff. It absolutely articulates, but definitely needs to be warmed up. And then two areas down here in the ankle area. Again, you can swivel them, move them up and down. A lot of really, really nice articulation. And then you have the articulation of the tail, which can go up, down, left, right, and swivel, just like everything else. But I don't really want to swivel that one too far because it's kind of a pain to do that, considering everything doesn't line up perfectly, but it can do that for sure. As far as the size goes, for a length, if we get the head nice and straight, for a length on our Sinoceratops, you are looking at about the 16.5-inch range, or around 42 centimeters, so very, very sizable. And then for a height, just shy of 7.25 inches, or around 18.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Sinoceratops from the Beasts of the Mesozoic, and you can definitely see that it sports a very impressive size, as all of these Wave 3 ceratopsians do. Definitely one of the biggest in the line. Leading up to this point, the final, bunch here are all very large, but when you look back on the line overall, it's definitely one of the larger ceratopsians, and in comparison to these figures, especially Mr. Papo Rex, you should have a pretty good idea of that. And then for another comparison to really show how large the ceratopsian is, here is the Zuniceratops, one of the smallest in the line. Actually, I think it is the smallest in comparison to the Sinoceratops. So you can see a massive difference between these two when it comes to the overall size, again showing you just how large the Sinoceratops is. But do not worry, my friends, because it is definitely not the largest. As we can see, the adult Triceratops here quite easily outsizes the Sinoceratops, but even showing you how large the Sinoceratops is in comparison to the Triceratops, I feel like that should give you a pretty good respect for the size of the Sinoceratops, because it's not too far off, and for it to look as massive as it does next to the Triceratops, I think furthers how impressive the size is of this figure. So this brand new Beasts of the Mesozoic Wave 3 Ceratopsian series Sinoceratops is beautiful, as every Ceratopsian has been in this entire wave. This line is honestly one of the best things going in the dinosaur collecting community currently, has been for quite some time, and will without question be heading into the future, because there is just so many unbelievable species that we've received in this line, and many of these figures, if not all of them, have been the best versions of the species that they represent, and I think that's easily the case with this Sinoceratops. In my opinion, it's definitely the best Sinoceratops I have in my collection, and one of the most striking that I think I've ever seen as far as the paint scheme goes. As per usual, David Silva and the Beasts of the Mesozoic line come up with some very cool, very flashy paint schemes, obviously based on living animals. I'm not 100% sure which one the Sinoceratops is based on, but that's one of the reasons why you always find so many nice natural looking paint schemes, is because they're always inspired by modern day animals. So of course it's going to look nice and natural, but saying that, it may not always look nice and natural, because you're taking something from a modern day animal and transferring it to a prehistoric animal. So just because one coloration looks nice and natural on an animal currently, that doesn't mean that it's going to definitely look nice and natural on like a Ceratopsian, especially a Ceratopsian, because they're such unique looking species. But I feel like David Silva has continuously done a great job of turning those paint schemes into variations that look really good and really natural on the dinosaurs that they are applied to, and this Sinoceratops is definitely a very good example of just how good they are at doing that, because the coloration honestly looks like it should be the color of the dinosaur and is perfectly applied throughout the course of the figure, with many different washes and very nice dry brushing that helps to make the detail of the sculpt just pop so nicely. And speaking of the sculpt, of course it is as highly detailed as you're ever going to find. Every ounce of detail is beautifully brought to life, of course, with the paint, but is incredibly well done as far as the actual sculpt goes. It is so beautifully sculpted as far as the scale detail. Like, I really like the very large, rough and rugged looking scales throughout the course of the figure, and some nice osteoderms poking up here and there. And just in general, the detailing of the horn and the beak and stuff, everything looks great. So as a whole, this is a wonderful addition to the Beasts of the Mesozoic Ceratopsian series. An incredibly beautiful paint scheme, a fantastic sculpt with some killer articulation. You have got yourself an amazing Ceratopsian right here with this Sinoceratops. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where you can head on over to the Beasts of the Mesozoic website right now and pick yourself up this fantastic Sinoceratops. So make sure you check that link in the description, go buy this beautiful figure, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.